Appreciate everyone being on the call today. We are going to go through a bit of my journey, landing at the manager README. And I hope that it provides some opportunities for you in your role, in your career, to clarify expectations, manage those expectations, corral people in the right direction, is one of the utilities of the tool that I've found. A bit of obligatory text on the first slide. What a way to start, right? As mentioned, talk about it for 10 minutes, then open it up to Q&A. A couple more things about me. As Manon has mentioned, we've worked together several times, and I've always enjoyed how when I've needed a team yesterday, when I've needed to increase throughput, capacity, velocity, ad hoc projects, I've always been able to turn to Tintash and get that team, maybe not yesterday, but maybe tomorrow, or maybe Monday when it was a Friday. But I have scaled out teams and processes and done a lot of product engineering over the years. When I think about the conversation we had a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, the tool that I've been using of the README, how did I get here? Well, I'm certainly not, I'm not a leader, a thought leader in it. It's been around for about 10 years, but over these last 10 years, as I've been in engineering leadership roles, there's been a lot of repetition. That's probably the key thing that I've learned in being a manager is the power of repetition. And this, the README is some of the bullet points you'll see when we get to mine. They've been for interviews, or I've had people on teams ask me point blank things like, "What's your management style?" And they've wanted more of a sound bite experience as opposed to experiencing it in real time. And so I've found the utility of starting to manage expectations proactively. That's kind of how I got to the README. A lot of repetition of messages, some of which were unique that I was bringing to my roles. Some weren't. There's lots of wisdom out there that is not uniquely mine. And so incorporating that and being able to refer to it again and again and again in the vein of a cheat sheet, I found it useful as a tool. Certainly, as I've gotten to know myself personally and professionally better, there have been facets of how I show up as a person, as a manager, as a leader, that I just didn't know about myself previously. But as there's been repetition as a manager, as a leader, I've been able to codify some of that to, as I say, proactively manage expectations ahead of time. And in reflecting on the experience for today, one of the key things, one of the most powerful things about going through this exercise for me, not one that I would have anticipated when I started the journey, but one of the key findings has been as I've been able, and it's a work in progress, it's not finished. You'll see a finished product or what looks like a finished product, but it is truly a work in progress, as I am a work in progress, and many of us on the call probably are too. As I continue to refine my ability to be impactful, as I continue to support teams to be impactful, as I continue to force multiply as a leader and as a manager, it is with that in mind of trying to create the best conditions possible over what control I have anyway, in terms of value adding. So that all having been said, let's just take a look. And I think I'm still screen sharing. So I'll send out the deck. It's got the links, one of which being to my README. And again, this structure has evolved over time. It's been influenced. It's been motivated by others that I've seen. Manon shared out a link to some examples, and that maps to some of the other examples I've seen or been inspired by. I think the first kind of manager README came out like 10 plus years ago, and I didn't jump on that train right away. But over time, like I say, the repetition of my own experience, I've seen the utility of saying, oh, this is who I am as a leader. This is how I show up. Might as well capture it. Does it make sense? So yeah, there's no standard. Well, there might be standard protocols, there might be standard structures. I don't always follow standard structure. So yeah, take what you like and leave the rest on that one. But certainly in terms of as I've been in different environments that have necessitated different flavors of leadership styles, I have brought out certain parts of my abilities in those different um, environments. Certainly, first principles has become more and more a thing as I think about frameworks for teams, engineering, product and engineering. Some of these are, well, I don't think any of these things is uniquely mine. But then certainly as I've been in environments, as I think we all have been, right? What do I expect of myself? What do I expect of the team? Being able to say that ahead of time, proactively, in order to manage expectations as it drives the team dynamics, the team velocity in ways, and helps for cross-functional collaboration as well. So all of this, as it's all there. It's a lengthy document. I probably need to pare that down a little bit. But it does kind of take me to, how do you get going on this if you've not done this sort of thing before? Well, first things first, of course, right away, go find an example that you like, clone it, because it's just Markdown and GitHub often. It's not always, but there's so many examples on GitHub that you can so easily do that, and you can start to do your own modifications. But don't forget, I'm at least a work in progress, always evolving, and I'm sure all of us really are. So periodically, setting aside some time to iterate and update. And this last bullet point is, in terms of a cheat sheet, again, I keep on going back to certain things again and again and again. Nothing is a priority if everything's a priority is just a thing I see time and time again in the roadmap, product or technical, and any sort of program management. It always comes in handy. And there again, the repetition of the message just to help when teaching other people how to think about what they need to think about when it comes to execution and operational excellence. These, again, are codifications of my go-tos in a cheat sheet sort of way that I find handy. And I do incorporate in meetings, if it's all hands, if it's, if it's staff meetings, whatever, just to, put a fine point on things when necessary. So as I said, I'll send the deck out. There's some links, some decent readings. You can get started from there. And that will conclude the lightning talk in hopefully 10 minutes or less. I wasn't even quite paying attention to time, probably should have been. But yeah, that having been said, I'll stop sharing and we can, everybody knows what they need to know to go forth.
Can I go with the first question then? Or
sure.
How do we do this? Do we do the hands up thing or?
Raise hands. That's a great idea.
Hands, not hands up. Thanks for correcting me. No hands are going up, so I guess mine is okay. Well, thank you. Go for it.
Sure. Anthony, I want to do this, but I have this vision in my mind of like something really short and sweet, because one of my things that I care about as a leader is not imposing a lot on my direct reports. I want to give them just like, here's the minimum you need to know. Now come back, come back to me with additional questions. Out of the README that you've put together, what are the pieces that you find others get the most value out of?
Let's see. Great question. I would say the first principles and the mantras that I say again and again, I find those get the most value. The mileage may vary, but the repetition of those messages helps put that point on. Look, we've talked about this before. We're talking about this again. There's something here that keep it simple, silly, keep it simple, whatever. That repetition of that first principle is probably the biggest section that's of most value. Now I'll say another technique I've been using because I can be a little overly complex, is to take a bunch of stuff, put it in a model, and say in no more than 250 characters, create a summary of this, whether that's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. So if you are a little verbose like me, a little too loquacious sometimes, that's a way to pare it down. Does that help? Good, Ali.
Go for
I
it,
think
Ali.
Michael's question, Anthony, if you could answer that, if you could share the
We-
link here, perhaps it would be
We'll
helpful
come
to
back to
sort of
that.
go through. Yeah, okay, sure.
Sorry, we'll come back to that next. It's Ali's turn.
Hey, very interesting, another document, but I am curious, how are you using it? Like, what's the actual, is it like you start a new job? Is it like entering into into a consulting thing? Is it any new member joining? Like, how does it get used?
Thinking about it, there've been 2 times, usually when starting a new role, just to get it out there, and in a time-effective way, kind of get the message out about who I am as a leader. So number 1, but number 2, I do incorporate parts of it into meetings, because when I'm with a team for a period of time, I'll start to notice patterns. And so incorporating, I don't say, hey, this is the part of my README that I'm talking about here. I simply refer to the principle or the saying, the mantra, to help underscore the point that I'm trying to prove. For example, don't boil the ocean, or if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. Perfect is the enemy of good. Just having those at the ready and incorporating those in the meetings helps with the reinforcement of the idea because of the repetition of the message.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not just that you're using it for affecting cultural change. It's also something that you're using to kind of create an accountability on yourself for this is who I am. These are the leadership principles I want to live by.
Certainly, that's true, and that dovetails into this responsibility, this manifestation of what's the best environment I work in. And there's been this unexpected effect of, in doing this exercise and recognizing that I hate project updates. I really hate project updates. Now, I've said, please don't ask me for project updates, and I might need to find a way to reword that, but I really do hate giving project updates because I feel like I'm doing my job if I'm putting processes, tooling, structure in place, that it becomes self-serve. Because I don't want to be, I don't want to have the bus factor. I don't want to be the bus factor. And for creating a scalable team, for creating scalable processes, that's an ultimate underpinning. So, I do need to find a way to frame it a little bit more tactfully. But I do find that in those environments where I'm asked for project updates and I bristle at that, the experience has helped me realize, oh, I need to find a way to automate, to scale in a way that lands with people, because that is such a core of my being. So there is this personal accountability aspect to it. Sure.
Okay.
Mohammed Ali.
Thank you, Anthony, for the talk. And I have a question. I might be just reading it wrong, but correct me. So the way I see it, it's more like if you are jumping into a new role where the team is new as well. This seems to work because now I'm telling the people that, okay, this is my style. These are my principles. I'm most comfortable working this way. But what if we are joining a team that is already there? Then doesn't it collide with the fact that I need to be more um, what's that called? So I need to understand their culture. I need to understand what they are more comfortable with than imposing my principles on them. So there has to be a middle ground. If I take it this way, that okay, this is my README, then it creates a wall. It creates a barrier that the team cannot, pierce through. Did you get my point, or did I read it all?
100%, 100%. And certainly, it's another great question. Am I accommodating when I join existing teams? Of course. Do I show up any differently than who I've become as a leader? I mean, there are some propensities and there are some tendencies that identify who I am and how I show up. Now, if that comes at and that has created some conflict in the past, and I would say that a healthy amount of conflict is good. I've often been brought in when things weren't working, and a person with my background was needed to come in and create some structure and some process to get things back on track. So I'm not advocating to, be a square peg in a round hole. There's certainly always some accommodation, but I know enough about myself at this point in my life that I see things a certain way. And so I've got a certain flavor of how I tackle things. So I'm strongly opinionated about those things. Now, when I get into an environment, do I need to accommodate to culture? To an extent. Do I need to completely adapt to that? Well, there's accommodation. I am who I am at this point, and I know enough about myself to be strong in the value I bring with who I am as a leader, while also adjusting. And that's a good thing to do in any team. But again, I've been doing this for a little while, so I know who I am.
Okay, Michael, please, and I guess that'll be the last question for the day.
Yeah, great point, Anthony. Thank you so much for all this, and really interesting. I think my point was related to the previous one. I think, and maybe a question is, it feels to me like the role of the individual publishing a README, for example, changes based on the sort of leadership place they sit on the team. If I'm understanding, see if you agree with this, that if you are the I remember doing one of these a long time ago for a team that I had been leading for 5 or 6 years, and I articulated a README for the team, right? Because of the culture that we had evolved together. It was almost identical to the format you've got, but it was more we do this rather than this is about me. I can see the value greatly in being able to do that if you're a new leader. In the case where you're turning something around or you're arriving from the outside, let me tell you about who I am, and let's talk about how we might uncover the places where we might need to accommodate each other as developing a team together. I would also see this really interesting if I wasn't the inbound leader, but just a member of the team. And I'm thinking of a particular situation that I'm undergoing right now where I'm a peer of someone, and it would have been really nice if I had had his README on my desk or available to me when we first started to get to know each other and develop a trusting relationship. So I wonder, maybe, what's your take about like the different roles that this exercise could take based on your position in leadership around a team? How do you see it?
I think that's spot on in terms of understanding the audience. I think it goes back to that. And any tool is just a tool. And if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Great saying. So understanding the audience and understanding the tool for the audience. Certainly, if I were to think about a general observation of the tool, it would be to keep it brief. And I'm guilty of not always doing that. I recognize how much easier it is to share at any level a concise paragraph while that might not be, it might not do justice to the breadth of a person's experience, it will get read more often.
Mhm.
And so, as somebody coming in as an engineering leader, the team is probably more likely to read the entirety of the README. Coming in as like an EM or a director or as an IC, a 2-page manifesto, probably not so much.
Right.
Not so much. So I get the relational dynamics are at play. But unity or identity, the tool as an identity construct, whether
That's
for the
good.
individual or the team, it's a great exercise to go through because we get to done is a first principle of mine. And the definition of done, as I'm sure every one of us on this call would say, depends on the team. So just facilitating the team to figure out those sorts of things, like what does it mean for us to get to done, is such a great exercise.
Anthony, how are you doing on time? Do you have a few more minutes?
I have a few more minutes, yeah.
Okay. Vase, please go for it, and then Naji, and then I guess we'll wrap it up.
Simple enough question. Have you deleted anything from your README? The commit history doesn't share anything, so I have to ask you.
Of course, you look at my commit history. I think I put it together in like a Apple Note over time, and then when it got to a certain point, I was like, oh, I can just make this markdown and put it in GitHub and make it more public. So I iterated on it for probably at least 2 or 3 years before I put it in commit history. I didn't answer your question. What did I delete? Probably the whole thing, like what I came up with previously. I actually do have another version in my notes. And then, I started once, I did the draft, or what I consider the draft now. And then over time, I might have seen a couple of other examples and it was like, oh, leadership style, oh, first principles, oh, expectations of myself and team. Those make more sense in a public forum.
So just to add on, the intent of the question is more that have you found that you put in something? So I understand it becoming better, but you look at something and later on either you've changed or you realize that this was incorrect or inadequate and doesn't need to be there. So sort of the process of self-discovery is more that the question is aimed at.
I have not codified my own journey and path of self-discovery into the README in quite as an articulate manner. It's been more additive so far, but I'll get back to you about anything I delete.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, Anthony, thanks a lot for the talk. It was pretty awesome. I'd seen similar mentions of, having a README around, so I appreciate the links, and I definitely want to follow up and check those out. I want to come back to something. It's slightly related to the overall talk, but one thing I wanted to ask about, one of the principles you called out was, trying to scale back a little bit on project updates. I find that you get a lot of different types of people that you might encounter in different work situations. There are people who embrace tools, there are people who embrace automation, and there are people who, for lack of a better phrase, are maybe a little bit more old school. They do prefer to have a roundtable product update meeting. They do prefer to have sync meetings and status updates and things like that. How have you sort of like tried to get everybody to harmonize under these kind of situations where me personally, I've introduced project management tools, estimation tools, systems to help people self-service and understand the business from a bird's eye point of view. But, you do get those types, even in leadership positions that are, I want to get everybody in a room and, and just go around the table and ask everybody what's going on. How do you sort of reconcile that?
I would be lying if I said I've done a great job of that. Same situation as you. I think you break it down well. There's people at the end of the day who don't want to use tooling. And, cultural transformation, I've attempted. I've tried to sell it. Any job high enough is a sales job, right? And I've tried time and again with certain personalities that don't tend to want to use the tooling to self-serve. And sometimes there's been more adoption, but oftentimes they appreciate more of a manual approach.
Okay, so it comes back to that flexibility item of like, hey, this is my README and this is my preferred working style, my preferred working hours, the way I prefer to approach certain problems. But hey, even I have to maybe um, give and take a little bit on some of these items as well, depending on the team, depending on who I'm working with, just depending on the work environment. So no, thanks a lot. I appreciate the candid answer, and ultimately it comes back to flexibility in these kind of roles. So yeah, thanks a lot.
To the earlier question about it's not hard and fast necessarily. I do need to accommodate, as does anybody walking into a team that has some established norms. Do I try to change culture? Oh, heck yes. Am I always successful? No. And then I pick my battles, you know.